The train's whistle pierced the Montana morning air just as Zara Vaughn lost her footing on the iron steps, her carpetbag flying from her hands as gravity pulled her toward the dusty platform of Bannack Station, where strong arms caught her mid-fall and a pair of storm-gray eyes met hers with an intensity that made her forget to breathe. "Easy there, miss," the cowboy said, his voice rough as gravel but warm as summer honey, steadying her against his chest before carefully setting her upright on the wooden platform. His hands lingered a moment longer than necessary on her waist, and she felt the heat of them through her traveling dress even after he stepped back. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs, though whether from the near fall or the stranger's touch, she could not say. She smoothed her skirts with trembling hands and tucked a strand of dark hair behind her ear, acutely aware that she must look a fright after 3 days on the train from Philadelphia. "Thank you, sir. I am quite all right." The cowboy bent to retrieve her carpetbag, and she noticed the way his worn denim shirt stretched across broad shoulders, the way dust clung to his dark hair beneath his hat. When he straightened and handed her the bag, she saw his face clearly for the first time. He was perhaps 25 or 26, with sun-bronzed skin, a strong jaw shadowed with stubble, and those remarkable gray eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully maintained composure. "Lincoln Jameson, madam," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Welcome to Bannack." "Zara Vaughn," she replied, then bit her lip, wondering if she should have given her name so freely. She glanced around the platform, searching for the man she was meant to meet. "I am looking for Mr. Thomas Hartwell. Do you know him?" Something flickered across Lincoln's face, too quick to read. "Tom, sure, I know him. He is my neighbor, owns the spread just north of mine." He shifted his weight, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. "You are the mail-order bride he has been expecting." The directness of the question made heat crawl up Zara's neck. She had known what she was when she answered Mr. Hartwell's advertisement, when she had exchanged letters with him for 6 months, when she had boarded that train east of Philadelphia with everything she owned packed into one bag and one trunk. But hearing it stated so baldly by this stranger made her feel exposed, vulnerable. "I am to be married to Mr. Hartwell, yes," she said, lifting her chin. "He was supposed to meet me here." Lincoln's expression darkened, and he glanced down the main street that ran through Bannack. The town was smaller than Zara had imagined. A collection of wood frame buildings and false front stores that had sprung up after gold was discovered in Grasshopper Creek back in 1862. It was now 1874, and the boom had faded, leaving behind a rough but somewhat civilized settlement of ranchers, miners, and merchants trying to make honest livings in the Montana Territory. "Tom mentioned something last week about having business in Virginia City today," Lincoln said slowly, as if the words pained him. "Probably got held up. The roads are still muddy from last week's rain." Zara's stomach sank. She had no money for a hotel, had spent nearly every cent she possessed on the train ticket west. Mr. Hartwell's letters had promised he would be waiting for her, that they would be married immediately by the circuit preacher who came through Bannack twice a month. She had timed her arrival to coincide with the preacher's visit, which according to Mr. Hartwell's last letter should be tomorrow. "I see," she said quietly, trying to keep the disappointment from her voice. "Perhaps I could wait for him somewhere." Lincoln studied her face, and she had the unsettling feeling that he could read every thought crossing her mind. "The hotel is decent enough, run by Mrs. Cooper. She will not charge you too dearly." "I have very little money," Zara admitted, hating the confession but seeing no alternative. She was stranded in a strange town, and lying about her circumstances would only make things worse. The muscle in Lincoln's jaw jumped again. He looked away, toward the mountains that rose in the distance, purple and massive against the bright blue sky. When he looked back at her, something had shifted in his expression, a decision made. My ranch is not far. I've got a housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, who lives in the main house. You could stay there until Tom shows up. It would be proper enough and you would not have to pay. Zara hesitated. Everything her mother had taught her about propriety screamed that this was inappropriate, that she should not go anywhere with a strange man, even one with kind eyes and capable hands. But her mother was 5 years dead, and Zara had left behind the rigid social structures of Philadelphia precisely because they had offered her nothing but a future as an unpaid companion to her wealthy aunt, forever grateful and forever diminished. "That is very generous, Mr. Jameson," she said carefully, "but I could not impose." "It is not an imposition," Lincoln said, "and it is just common decency. You cannot stand on this platform all day waiting for a man who may not return until tomorrow." He gestured toward a wagon hitched nearby, pulled by 2 sturdy horses. "I came into town for supplies anyway. I will take you out to my place. Mrs. Patterson will feed you something better than train food, and when Tom gets back, I will drive you over to his ranch myself." It made sense. It was practical. And yet Zara felt as though she stood at a crossroads, that accepting this offer would alter something fundamental in her carefully laid plans. But what choice did she have? She could not afford the hotel, and she knew no one else in this town. "Very well," she said. "Thank you, Mr. Jameson." "Lincoln," he corrected, taking her carpetbag and heading toward the wagon. "No need for formality out here." He helped her up onto the wagon seat, his hands once again steadying her waist, and she caught the scent of him. Leather and sage and something earthy that made her think of wide, open spaces. He loaded her trunk into the wagon bed with ease, muscles flexing beneath his shirt, then climbed up beside her and took the reins. As they rolled out of Bannack, heading west toward the foothills, Zara tried to focus on the landscape rather than the man beside her. The Montana Territory was nothing like Philadelphia. Everything here was vast and untamed, the sky so big it made her dizzy, the mountains so imposing they seemed to crowd the edges of the world. Grasshopper Creek glinted in the sunlight as they passed it, and she saw a few men still working claims, panning for gold that was increasingly scarce. "What made you answer Tom's advertisement?" Lincoln asked after they had driven in silence for several minutes. Zara considered how much to tell him. "My parents are both dead. I had been living with my aunt, but her circumstances changed, and she made it clear I was no longer welcome. Mr. Hartwell's letters seemed kind. He described a good life here, a partnership." "A partnership," Lincoln repeated, something bitter in his tone. "That sounds like Tom, always practical." "You do not approve?" Lincoln was quiet for a long moment, guiding the horses around a muddy rut in the road. "It is not my place to approve or disapprove. Tom is a decent man, works hard, keeps his word. He will provide for you." But there was something Lincoln was not saying, something that hung in the air between them. Zara studied his profile, the strong lines of his face, the way his hands held the reins with confident ease. "What about you?" she asked. "Do you have a wife?" "No, madam." "Why not?" He glanced at her, surprise flickering across his features. "That is a forward question." "You ask me a forward question," she pointed out. A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth, transforming his face from handsome to devastating. "Fair enough. I have not found the right woman, I suppose, and I have been busy building my ranch. It does not leave much time for courting." "What kind of ranch?" "Cattle, mostly. Some horses. I have got about 500 head now, been building the herd for the past 6 years. My father started the place back in '68, but he died of pneumonia 4 winters ago, left it to me." "I am sorry about your father." "Thank you." Lincoln's voice softened. He was a good man, came west after the war, wanted to make something of his own. He would have liked seeing what the ranch has become. They fell into a more comfortable silence after that, and Zara allowed herself to relax slightly. The wagon rocked gently over the uneven road, and the spring air was cool but pleasant, carrying the scent of new grass and wildflowers. She saw cattle grazing in the distance, antelope bounding across the hills, and once, an eagle circling high overhead. When they finally turned onto a long drive, Zara sat up straighter. Lincoln's ranch was more substantial than she had expected. The main house was a two-story structure built of logs and rough-hewn planks, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. There were several outbuildings, a barn, a bunkhouse, corrals, and what looked like a smokehouse. Everything was well maintained, the fences sturdy, the yard tidy. "This is beautiful," Zara said honestly. Lincoln's expression eased into something like pride. "Thank you. I have put a lot of work into it." A woman emerged from the house as they pulled up, wiping her hands on her apron. She was perhaps 50, with graying brown hair pulled back in a bun and a face that spoke of both hardship and kindness. "Mrs. Patterson," Lincoln called, setting the brake. "We have got a guest." He helped Zara down from the wagon, and she felt that same jolt when his hand circled her waist. Their eyes met, held for a heartbeat too long before he released her and stepped back. "This is Miss Zara Vaughn," Lincoln said. "She is Tom Hartwell's intended bride, but he got delayed in Virginia City. I told her she could stay here until he gets back, if that is all right with you, Mrs." Patterson's eyebrows rose, but she nodded. "Of course. Welcome, Miss Vaughn. You must be exhausted from your journey." "Thank you, Mrs. Patterson, and please call me Zara." "Come inside, dear. I will show you to a room where you can wash up, and then we will have some lunch." "Lincoln, bring her trunk inside, would you?" Zara followed Mrs. Patterson into the house, aware of Lincoln behind them carrying her trunk. The interior was surprisingly comfortable, with polished wood floors, braided rugs, and simple but solid furniture. There was a stone fireplace in the main room, and through an open doorway, she glimpsed a kitchen with a large table. Mrs. Patterson led her upstairs to a small bedroom with a window overlooking the ranch. It contained a bed covered with a star-pattern quilt, a dresser, a washstand, and a rocking chair. Simple, but clean and welcoming. The house belonged to Lincoln's parents, Mrs. Patterson explained as Lincoln set the trunk by the dresser. His mother picked out most of the furnishings before she passed. She had good taste. "It is lovely," Zara said. Lincoln lingered in the doorway, his hat in his hands. "I will ride over to Tom's place later, see if he has returned. If not, I will leave word with his foreman about where you are." "Thank you," Zara said. "I truly appreciate your kindness." Something complicated passed across Lincoln's face. "It is nothing, just being neighborly." But it did not feel like nothing. It felt like something significant, like a thread being woven between them with each exchanged glance, each word. Zara told herself she was being foolish, that she was simply tired and overwhelmed from the journey, that this man was merely being decent to a stranger in need. She was here to marry Thomas Hartwell. She had made a promise. After Lincoln left, Mrs. Patterson brought up a pitcher of warm water and left Zara to wash and change. Alone finally, Zara sank onto the bed and allowed herself a moment of uncertainty. Everything had happened so quickly. One moment she had been stepping off the train. The next she was being swept into the life of a man who was not her intended husband. She thought of Lincoln's hands catching her, the way his eyes had darkened when she mentioned Thomas Hartwell, the reluctant smile that had transformed his face. Then she shook her head firmly. She was being ridiculous. She had exchanged letters with Mr. Hartwell for months, had made a commitment. The fact that she found his neighbor attractive was irrelevant and inappropriate. Zara unpacked a few items from her trunk, hanging her spare dress in the small wardrobe and setting out her brush and hand mirror on the dresser. She washed her face and hands, changed into a fresh dress of deep green cotton, and repinned her hair. When she looked at herself in the small mirror above the washstand, she saw a woman of 22 with dark hair, hazel eyes, and a determined expression. She had come west to build a new life. She would not let a pair of gray eyes and strong hands distract her from that purpose. When she came downstairs, she found Mrs. Patterson setting the kitchen table with bread, cheese, cold meat, and pickles. Lincoln was nowhere to be seen. "He went out to check on the cattle," Mrs. Patterson said, as if reading Zara's thoughts. "That man never stops working." "Sit down, dear, and eat something." Zara sat, suddenly realizing how hungry she was. The food on the train had been terrible, and she had been too nervous to eat much anyway. Now she discovered she was ravenous. "How long have you worked for Mr. Jameson?" Zara asked between bites of bread and cheese. "Since his father died 4 years back. I was a friend of his mother, came to help when she took sick, and just stayed on after she passed. Lincoln needed someone to keep house, and I needed the work after my own husband died. It has been a good arrangement." Mrs. Patterson paused, studying Zara with sharp but not unkind eyes. "I hope you do not mind me saying, but you seem like a sensible girl. Are you sure about this marriage to Tom Hartwell?" The question took Zara off guard. "I do not understand." "Is there something wrong with Mr. Hartwell?" No, nothing like that. Tom is a good man, honest and hardworking, but I have seen you and Lincoln together, and I have got eyes in my head." Heat flooded Zara's face. "Mr. Jameson was simply being kind. I am engaged to Mr. Hartwell." "Engaged suggests a romantic understanding," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "What you have got is a business arrangement. There is no shame in that, mind you. Plenty of marriages out here start that way. But if your heart pulls you in another direction, it is better to know that before you stand before a preacher." "I barely know Mr. Jameson," Zara protested. "I have known him for all of 2 hours." "Sometimes 2 hours is enough," Mrs. Patterson said. "I knew I would marry my Henry 5 minutes after we met. Love is not always a slow thing." Zara did not know what to say to that. She finished her meal in silence, helping Mrs. Patterson clear the dishes afterward. The afternoon stretched ahead of her, strange and shapeless. She was accustomed to keeping busy, and the idleness made her restless. "Is there anything I can help you with?" she asked Mrs. Patterson. "You are a guest, dear. You should rest, please. I would rather be useful." Mrs. Patterson considered, then nodded. "All right. I was planning to do some mending. If you are handy with a needle, I would welcome the company." They settled in the main room, Mrs. Patterson in a worn armchair and Zara on the sofa, a basket of mending between them. As they worked, Mrs. Patterson told her about Bannack, about the families who lived nearby, about the challenges and rewards of ranch life. Zara listened, storing away information, trying to picture her life here. "What is Mr. Hartwell like?" she asked eventually. "In his letters, he seemed educated, thoughtful." "Tom is all of that," Mrs. Patterson said. "He was a school teacher before he came west, inherited his ranch from an uncle 3 years back. He reads a lot, probably has the biggest library in Bannack. He is quiet, keeps to himself mostly. A thinker." "That sounds good," Zara said, but even to her own ears, the words lacked conviction. "Lincoln is different," Mrs. Patterson continued as if Zara had asked. "He is a man of action rather than contemplation. Works from dawn to dusk, knows every inch of his land, every head of cattle. He is quick to laugh and quick to anger, though he controls the anger better than most. And he is loyal. Once he gives his heart to something or someone, he does not waver. Zara's needle stilled. Why are you telling me this? Because I have seen the way he looks at you, Mrs. Patterson said simply. And I have seen the way you look at him. I thought you should know what kind of man he is before you make a choice you cannot undo. I have already made my choice, Zara said, but her voice wavered before Mrs. Patterson could respond. The front door opened and Lincoln entered, bringing with him the scent of outdoors and horses. His gaze found Zara immediately, and something in her chest tightened. Tom is back, he said. His foreman told me he returned about an hour ago. I said I would bring you over tomorrow morning, give you a chance to settle after your journey. Tomorrow. Suddenly, tomorrow felt too soon and yet interminably far away. Zara set aside her mending and stood, smoothing her skirts. Thank you for letting Mr. Hartwell know where I am, she said formally. Lincoln nodded, his expression unreadable. I will take you over after breakfast. It is about a 2-hour ride. I appreciate all you have done for me, Mr. Jameson. Lincoln, he corrected again, and there was something almost fierce in the way he said it, as if her use of his given name mattered to him. Lincoln, she repeated softly, and watched something flare in his eyes. The rest of the day passed in a strange tension. Zara helped Mrs. Patterson prepare supper, and when Lincoln came in from his work, the three of them sat at the kitchen table to eat. The meal was simple but good. Roasted chicken, potatoes, greens from the kitchen garden. Lincoln was quieter than he had been earlier, and Zara found herself hyper-aware of his presence, of every movement, every glance. After supper, Mrs. Patterson excused herself to her own small cottage behind the main house, leaving Zara and Lincoln alone. The propriety of it should have concerned Zara, but instead she felt a pull toward him, a desire to prolong their time together. Would you like to see the ranch? Lincoln asked, as if he felt the same pull. The sun will not set for another hour. Yes, Zara said, before she could talk herself out of it. They walked together across the yard, Lincoln pointing out the various buildings and explaining the workings of the ranch. He showed her the barn, where horses nickered softly in their stalls, and the chicken coop, where hens had already settled in for the night. They climbed a small rise behind the house, and from there, Zara could see the full sweep of his land, cattle grazing in the distance, the mountains rising beyond. It is beautiful, she said, and meant it. There was something raw and honest about this landscape that called to her. It is home, Lincoln said simply. He was quiet for a moment, then added, I know you are here for Tom, and I will respect that. But I want you to know that if things do not work out, if you find you have made a mistake, my door is always open. Not for anything improper, he added quickly. Just as a friend, someone you can turn to if you need help. Zara's throat tightened. Why are you being so kind to me? Lincoln turned to look at her, and in the slanting light of the setting sun, his eyes were luminous. Because the moment I caught you, something in me knew. I cannot explain it better than that. I know you are meant for Tom, and I know I have no right to feel this way, but I cannot help it. From the moment you fell into my arms, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Lincoln, I know, he said. I am not asking you to do anything. I am just being honest. You deserve honesty. They stood there as the sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, and Zara felt as though she stood on the edge of something vast and terrifying and wonderful. She had come west to marry a man she had never met, to build a practical life based on mutual need rather than emotion. But now, standing beside Lincoln as the day faded into twilight, she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. I should go inside, she said finally, though it was the last thing she wanted. Lincoln nodded, but as they walked back to the house, his hand brushed hers and Zara felt the touch like a brand. When they reached the porch, he paused. "Sleep well, Zara," he said softly. "Tomorrow is a big day for you." She wanted to say something, anything that would change what was coming, but she had no right. Instead, she simply said good night and went inside, climbing the stairs to her borrowed room with a heart that felt too heavy for her chest. That night, Zara lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling. She could hear the sounds of the ranch settling for the night, the distant lowing of cattle, the whisper of wind through the eaves, the creak of floorboards as Lincoln moved about downstairs before finally heading to his own room. She thought about Thomas Hartwell, tried to conjure his face from the single photograph he had sent with his letters. He had looked pleasant enough, with even features and kind eyes. His letters had been intelligent and courteous. There was no reason to think they would not make a suitable match. But when she closed her eyes, it was not Thomas Hartwell she saw. It was Lincoln Jameson, with his storm-gray eyes and his quiet strength, with his hands that had caught her and his voice that had spoken of knowing, of feeling something from the first moment. Morning came too quickly. Zara dressed carefully in her best dress, a dove-gray traveling suit that had been her mother's, altered to fit her. She pinned her hair with extra care and tried to quiet the fluttering in her stomach. Today, she would meet the man she had traveled across a continent to marry. Breakfast was a subdued affair. Mrs. Patterson had prepared eggs and bacon and fresh biscuits, but Zara could barely eat. Lincoln was quiet, his jaw tight, and she wondered what he was thinking. "You look lovely," Mrs. Patterson said, squeezing Zara's hand. "Tom is a lucky man." "Thank you," Zara managed. After breakfast, Lincoln brought the wagon around. He had changed into a clean shirt and had shaved, and Zara noticed despite herself. Mrs. Patterson hugged her goodbye, making her promise to come visit. "You will always have friends here, Mrs. Patterson said, and Zara understood the deeper meaning. No matter what happened, she would not be alone. The ride to Thomas Hartwell's ranch seemed to take both forever and no time at all. Lincoln drove in silence, his attention seemingly fixed on the road, but Zara caught him glancing at her more than once. She tried to think of something to say, but what was there? She was on her way to meet her future husband, and the man driving her there had confessed feelings for her the night before. There were no words adequate to the situation. Thomas Hartwell's ranch came into view just before noon. It was smaller than Lincoln's, the house a simple one-story structure, but everything looked neat and well kept. A man emerged from the house as they pulled up, and Zara's first thought was that he looked exactly like his photograph. Medium height, sandy hair, blue eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles. He was dressed in clean trousers and a pressed shirt, and he smiled as he approached the wagon. "Miss Vaughn," he said warmly, "I cannot tell you how sorry I am that I was not there to meet you yesterday. Business in Virginia City took longer than expected." "It is quite all right, Mr. Hartwell," Zara said, accepting his help to descend from the wagon. His hands on her waist felt nothing like Lincoln's, and she hated herself for noticing. "Please call me Thomas." He turned to Lincoln. "I appreciate you looking after Miss Vaughn, Jameson." "That was neighborly of you." "It was no trouble," Lincoln said, his voice carefully neutral. He set Zara's trunk on the porch, tipped his hat to her, and climbed back onto the wagon. "Lincoln," Zara said quickly, and he paused, looking back at her. She wanted to say something meaningful, something that would acknowledge what had passed between them, but with Thomas standing right there, she could only manage. "Thank you for everything." His eyes held hers for a long moment. "You are welcome. If you need anything, you know where to find me." Then he drove away, and Zara felt as though he were taking something vital with him, leaving her hollow and bereft. "Come inside," Thomas said, oblivious to her turmoil. "I am sure you would like to see the house, and then we can talk about the wedding. The circuit preacher is indeed coming through tomorrow, so the timing is perfect." Zara followed him inside, trying to focus on her surroundings. The house was tidy but sparse, with the feel of a place inhabited by someone who lived mostly in his own head. There were books everywhere, on shelves, stacked on tables, piled on the floor. Thomas led her through the main room, which served as both parlor and dining area, then showed her a small kitchen and 2 bedrooms. "This would be yours until the wedding," he said, indicating the smaller bedroom. "After that, we would share the larger one, of course." The casual mention of such intimacy made Zara's cheeks heat, though she knew it was foolish to be embarrassed. She was here to marry this man after all. "It is a nice house," she said. "Thank you. I have tried to make it comfortable. I know it is not as grand as what you might have known back east, but it is solid and paid for, and I am adding to it each year." Thomas removed his spectacles and cleaned them on his shirttail, a gesture that seemed habitual. "I should be honest with you, Miss Vaughn. I am not a romantic man. I answered that advertisement because I need a wife, someone to help with the house and the ranch, someone to talk to in the evenings. I can offer you security and respect, but I cannot promise passion or grand gestures. I hope that is acceptable." His bluntness was oddly refreshing, even as it confirmed what Zara had suspected from his letters. Thomas Hartwell was offering her exactly what she had thought she wanted: a practical partnership, a stable life. No drama, no risk of heartbreak, so why did it feel like a prison sentence? "I appreciate your honesty," she said carefully. "I came west with practical expectations, Mr. Hartwell. Thomas, I'm not looking for romance. I am looking for a home and a purpose." Thomas smiled, clearly relieved. "Excellent. Then I think we will do well together. Now, let me show you the rest of the ranch, and you can tell me what you think." They spent the afternoon walking around Thomas's property. He had about 200 acres, with a small herd of cattle and a vegetable garden. His foreman, a taciturn man named Pete, lived in a small cabin on the property and managed the day-to-day ranching operations, while Thomas focused on the bookkeeping and larger business decisions. Thomas talked as they walked, explaining his plans for expanding the herd, his ideas for improving the land. He was intelligent and thoughtful, exactly as his letters had suggested. He asked her about her journey, about her life in Philadelphia, and he listened attentively to her answers. He was, in every way, a perfectly suitable husband, and yet Zara felt nothing. No spark, no connection, none of the electric awareness she had felt with Lincoln. When Thomas touched her arm to guide her around a mud puddle, she felt only the pressure of his hand, nothing more. That evening, Thomas made supper for them, both a simple meal of beans and bacon and biscuits. They ate at the small table, and he told her about his work as a teacher before he had inherited the ranch, about the books he loved, about his plans for the future. Zara tried to engage, tried to feel something beyond polite interest, but it was no use. Her mind kept drifting to Lincoln, wondering what he was doing, whether he was thinking of her. "The preacher will arrive tomorrow around noon," Thomas said as they cleared the dishes. "If you are still willing, we can be married then. I have already arranged for a couple of neighbors to serve as witnesses." "Yes," Zara said, because what else could she say? She had traveled all this way, had accepted his offer. It would be unconscionable to back out now. "Yes, I am still willing." Thomas smiled, looking genuinely pleased. "I am glad. I think we will be happy together, Miss Vaughn. Perhaps not in the passionate way novels describe, but in a more lasting, comfortable way." Comfortable. The word echoed in Zara's mind as she lay in the narrow bed in the spare room that night. Was that really all she wanted from life? Comfort and security. Once, when she had lived with her aunt and faced an uncertain future that had seemed like more than enough. But now, having felt something more, having experienced that jolt of recognition and desire, comfort felt like settling for crumbs when a feast was within reach. But that feast was not hers to claim. Lincoln had not actually offered her anything beyond friendship. He had simply been honest about his feelings. For all she knew, he felt that same jolt with every reasonably attractive woman he met. She was probably making too much of a moment, of a few charged glances and touches. Sleep came fitfully, and when Zara woke in the morning, she felt gritty-eyed and unsettled. She dressed in her best dress, a deep blue silk that had been her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved all these years. As she fastened the tiny buttons and arranged her hair, she tried to summon some enthusiasm for the day ahead. She was getting married. This should be one of the happiest days of her life. Instead, she felt like she was walking to her own funeral. Thomas had arranged everything with meticulous care. When the preacher arrived just after noon, a balding man with kind eyes and a booming voice, two neighboring couples were already there to serve as witnesses. Thomas introduced them as the Millers and the Hendersons, good people who congratulated Zara warmly and seemed genuinely happy for Thomas. They all gathered in Thomas's parlor, which he had tidied with obvious effort. Someone had brought wildflowers, which now sat in a jar on the table, adding a touch of color to the plain room. The preacher opened his Bible and began the familiar words of the marriage ceremony. Zara tried to focus, tried to be present for this moment, but her mind felt distant, watching from far away. Thomas stood beside her, clean and neat, his expression content. He was getting exactly what he wanted, a practical solution to his need for a wife. And she was getting what she had thought she wanted: security, a home, a purpose. So why did it feel like she was making the worst mistake of her life? "Do you, Thomas Hartwell, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Thomas said clearly. "And do you, Zara Vaughn, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Zara opened her mouth to say the words that would bind her to Thomas Hartwell for the rest of her life. But what came out instead was, "I cannot. I am so sorry, but I cannot." The room fell silent. Thomas stared at her, his face cycling through confusion, hurt, and finally something like resignation. "I see," he said quietly. "May I ask why?" "Because it would not be fair to you," Zara said, tears stinging her eyes. "You deserve a wife who can give you her whole heart, and mine is already given elsewhere. I did not know that until just now, but I cannot marry you knowing it." Thomas removed his spectacles and cleaned them, that habitual gesture that now seemed like a way to buy time to think. When he put them back on, his expression was sad but not angry. "It is Jameson, is not it?" he asked. Zara's silence was answer enough. Thomas sighed. "I thought I saw something yesterday when he brought you here, the way he looked at you, the way you looked at him when he drove away." He turned to the preacher and the assembled witnesses. "I apologize for wasting your time, reverend folks. There will be no wedding today." The Millers and Hendersons murmured sympathetically to Thomas and gave Zara looks that ranged from pitying to disapproving before taking their leave. The preacher patted Thomas on the shoulder and said something about how things happen for a reason, then departed as well. Alone with Thomas, Zara felt the full weight of her decision. "I am truly sorry," she said. "I know I have hurt you, and I know I have behaved dishonorably by breaking my commitment. If you want me to leave immediately, I understand." "Where would you go?" Thomas asked practically. "You have no money, and you know no one here except me and Jameson. I will figure something out. Perhaps I can find work in town, earn enough for a train ticket back east." Thomas considered her for a long moment, then shook his head. "I will drive you to Jameson's ranch. If he is the man you want, you should go to him. But Zara, be certain. Lincoln is a good man, but he is not an easy one. He feels everything deeply, loves fiercely, and he will expect the same from you. It will not be a comfortable partnership. It will be intense and sometimes difficult. I know, Zara said softly, but I would rather have something real and difficult than something comfortable and hollow. Thomas smiled, though it did not quite reach his eyes. Then you have made the right choice, even if it is not the choice I had hoped for. Give me a moment to hitch up the wagon. The ride to Lincoln's ranch was quiet. Thomas did not seem angry, just sad and perhaps a bit relieved. When they finally turned onto Lincoln's property, they found him in one of the corrals, working with a young horse. He looked up at the sound of the wagon, and Zara saw him tense, his eyes moving from Thomas to her. "Jameson," Thomas called, pulling the wagon to a stop. "I believe this is yours." Lincoln vaulted over the corral fence with easy grace and approached the wagon, his expression guarded. "What are you talking about, Hartwell?" "Miss Vaughn has declined to marry me," Thomas said. "Something about her heart being otherwise engaged. I thought she should tell you herself." He turned to Zara. "Good luck. I hope you find what you are looking for." Then he drove away, leaving Zara standing in Lincoln's yard, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Lincoln stared at her, his face a careful blank. "You did not marry him?" "No." "Why not?" This was it, the moment she had to be brave, had to risk everything. "Because I could not marry one man while I am in love with another." Lincoln went very still. "What are you saying?" "I am saying that I fell in love with you the moment you caught me," Zara said, her voice shaking but steady. "I am saying that I tried to do the honorable thing, the practical thing, but I could not go through with it. I am saying that I have no money, no prospects, and no right to ask you for anything, but I am asking anyway. You said your door was always open. I am here. If you meant what you said yesterday, if you felt what I felt, then please, let me stay." For a long, terrible moment, Lincoln just looked at her, and Zara thought she might have made a catastrophic mistake, might have misread everything. Then he closed the distance between them in 3 long strides, cupped her face in his calloused hands, and kissed her. It was not a gentle kiss. It was fierce and claiming, full of the feelings he had been holding back, and Zara kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt as she pulled him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lincoln rested his forehead against hers. "I have loved you since the moment I caught you," he said roughly. "I spent last night cursing myself for a fool, knowing I had let you go to another man. I thought I had lost you before I ever had you." "You have me now," Zara said. "If you want me, want you." Lincoln laughed, the sound somewhere between joy and disbelief. "I have wanted nothing else since you stepped off that train. But Zara, I need you to be sure. Leaving Tom to be with me is a big decision. People will talk. Some will think you behaved dishonorably." "I do not care what people think," Zara said. "I care about being with the man I love." Lincoln kissed her again, softer this time but no less intense. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. "Then marry me. Not because you need security, not as a practical arrangement, but because you love me and I love you. Marry me, and I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." "Yes," Zara said, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, I will marry you." Lincoln swept her up and spun her around, both of them laughing like fools. When he set her down, he kept his arms around her, and Zara had never felt so safe, so right. Mrs. Patterson emerged from the house, drawn by the commotion. When she saw them together, she smiled knowingly. "Well, it is about time. I assume congratulations are in order. We are getting married," Lincoln announced, grinning like a boy. "I should hope so," Mrs. Patterson said. "Zara, welcome home." "Home." The word resonated through Zara, settling into her bones. This was home, not because of the house or the land, but because Lincoln was here. They waited a week before marrying, partly to allow Thomas time to recover from the awkwardness, and partly because Zara wanted the chance to truly know Lincoln before binding herself to him. Not that she had any doubts, but it felt important to build their relationship on more than just a moment's passion. During that week, Zara learned Lincoln's rhythms, the way he rose before dawn and worked until dusk, the way he was gentle with animals but fierce in defense of what was his. She learned that he liked his coffee black and his steaks rare, that he could not carry a tune but hummed anyway when he worked, that he had a wicked sense of humor that surfaced when he was relaxed and happy. Lincoln learned that Zara was tougher than she looked, that she was not afraid of hard work or getting her hands dirty. He learned that she had a gift with numbers and quickly grasped the details of ranch management, that she laughed freely and cried easily, that she challenged him when she thought he was wrong and supported him when he needed it. They talked for hours each evening, sitting on the porch as the sun set, learning each other's histories, dreams, and fears. Lincoln told her about growing up in Missouri before the war, about his father's decision to come west and start fresh, about the loneliness he had felt building the ranch without someone to share it with. Zara told him about her childhood in Philadelphia, her parents' deaths, the suffocating years living with her aunt, the desperation that had driven her to answer a mail-order bride advertisement. "I am glad you answered it," Lincoln said one evening, his arm around her shoulders as they watched the stars emerge. "Even if it was Tom's advertisement and not mine, it brought you here to me." "Do you think he is all right?" Zara asked, still feeling guilty about Thomas. "He will be fine. Tom is resilient, and honestly, I think he knew you two were not right for each other. He was just too stubborn to admit it." Lincoln pressed a kiss to her temple. "Stop worrying about him and focus on us." "Us," Zara repeated, savoring the word. "I like the sound of that." When the circuit preacher returned a week later, Zara wore her mother's blue silk dress again, but this time she walked to meet her groom with joy rather than dread. They married in Lincoln's parlor with Mrs. Patterson and several ranch hands as witnesses, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Lincoln kissed her thoroughly enough to make Mrs. Patterson laugh, and the ranch hands cheer. That night, alone in the bedroom that was now theirs, Lincoln was gentle and patient, mindful that this was Zara's first time. He made love to her with a tenderness that brought tears to her eyes, and afterward, as she lay in his arms, Zara marveled at how different her life had become in the space of 2 weeks. "Are you happy?" Lincoln asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Zara said honestly, "though I still feel I should pinch myself to make sure this is real." "It is real," Lincoln assured her. "You are mine and I am yours, and nothing is ever going to change that." As Zara drifted to sleep, safe and warm in her husband's arms, she sent a silent thank you to whatever twist of fate had made her stumble on that train platform, had put her in the path of the man who would catch her and never let go. The months that followed were both harder and more rewarding than Zara had anticipated. Ranch life was demanding, with work that never truly ended. She learned to gather eggs, tend the garden, preserve food for winter, cook large meals for the ranch hands, and 100 other tasks that made up the daily rhythm of their lives. Her hands, once soft and pale, became brown and calloused. Her body grew stronger. But she also learned the profound satisfaction of building something lasting, of working alongside the man she loved toward shared goals. When she and Lincoln stood on their porch in the evening, looking out over land they were shaping together, She felt a contentment she had never known in Philadelphia. She also became part of the community in a way she had not expected. The women of Bannack gradually warmed to her once they realized she was serious about her commitment to Lincoln and the ranch. She made friends with Sarah Miller and Emma Henderson, the women who had witnessed her aborted wedding to Thomas. Though they had been scandalized at first, they came to accept and even admire her for following her heart. Thomas himself remained cordial, though he avoided Lincoln's ranch and limited his interactions with them. About 6 months after Zara and Lincoln married, word came that Thomas had begun corresponding with another mail-order bride, and Zara hoped he would find happiness with someone better suited to him. The first real test of their marriage came that first winter. Montana winters were brutal, and Zara was unprepared for the cold, the isolation, the endless white landscape that made her feel trapped and claustrophobic. Cabin fever set in after weeks of being snowed in, and she and Lincoln had their first real fight, voices raised over something trivial that masked deeper frustrations. But they learned to fight fair, to talk through their disagreements rather than letting resentment fester. They learned that love was not just the passion they felt, but also the choice they made each day to work through difficulties together. By the time spring came, melting the snow and bringing green back to the world, their relationship had deepened into something even stronger than before. In late spring, Zara missed her monthly courses. At first, she thought nothing of it, but when a second month passed, she began to suspect. Mrs. Patterson noticed her queasiness in the mornings and confirmed what Zara had begun to hope. "You are with child, dear Mrs. Patterson said, her eyes twinkling. "Have you told Lincoln?" "Not yet," Zara said, her hand moving instinctively to her still flat belly. "I wanted to be certain." That evening she waited until after supper when they were alone on the porch in the gathering dusk. "Lincoln, I have something to tell you." He turned to her, immediately alert to the seriousness in her tone. "What is it? Are you all right?" "I am fine," she assured him quickly. "Better than fine." "Lincoln, I am pregnant." For a moment he just stared at her, his face cycling through surprise, disbelief, and finally pure joy. Then he let out a whoop that probably carried all the way to the next county, swept her into his arms, and spun her around. "Careful," she said, laughing. "You will make me dizzy." "I am going to be a father," Lincoln said, setting her down but keeping his hands on her waist. "We are going to have a baby." "Yes," Zara said, tears of happiness streaming down her face. "We are." That night, Lincoln was so gentle with her that it made her laugh, treating her like she was made of glass. "I am pregnant, not broken," she told him. "You do not have to act like I might shatter." "I know," he said, his hand splayed protectively over her belly, "but you are carrying our child. You are the most precious thing in my world, and now even more so." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through summer and into fall. As Zara's belly grew, so did Lincoln's protectiveness. He insisted she rest more, that she not lift anything heavy, that she let the ranch hands take over some of her usual tasks. Zara found it both endearing and frustrating, wanting to maintain her independence even as she appreciated his care. In November, when the first snows began to fall, Zara went into labor. Mrs. Patterson had arranged for the town's midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Chen who had come to Montana with her miner husband years before, to stay at the ranch as Zara's time approached. When the contractions began in earnest, Mrs. Chen shooed Lincoln out of the bedroom, despite his protests. "This is women's work," Mrs. Chen said firmly. "You would just be in the way. Go pace downstairs like every other expectant father." The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next morning. Lincoln did pace downstairs, driving Mrs. Patterson to distraction with his worry. He tried to occupy himself with work, but he could not concentrate, not when he could hear Zara's cries of pain from upstairs. Finally, as the sun climbed toward noon, he heard a different sound, the wail of a newborn baby. He took the stairs 3 at a time, bursting into the bedroom despite Mrs. Chen's rules. Zara lay in the bed, exhausted and pale but smiling, holding a small bundle wrapped in a quilt. "Lincoln, meet your son." Lincoln approached slowly, almost reverently, and looked down at the tiny red face of his child. The baby had a shock of dark hair and was screaming lustily, his little fists waving in the air. "A son," Lincoln breathed, sinking onto the edge of the bed. "We have a son." "He has got your lungs," Zara said tiredly, but her eyes were full of love as she watched Lincoln reach out a tentative finger, which the baby immediately grasped with surprising strength. "What shall we call him?" Lincoln asked. They had discussed names throughout the pregnancy but had not settled on anything definite. Now, looking at their son, Zara knew. "James," she said. "After your father, James Jameson." Lincoln's eyes grew bright with unshed tears. "You would name him after my father." "He would have been proud of you, of what you have built here," Zara said. "I think it is fitting." Lincoln leaned down and kissed her, gentle and sweet, then kissed his son's forehead. "Welcome to the world, James. You are going to love it here." The early months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful in equal measure. James was a demanding baby, crying frequently and sleeping little, but watching Lincoln with their son made Zara fall in love with him all over again. Lincoln was a devoted father, rising in the night to walk with James when he fussed, singing off-key lullabies that somehow soothed the baby, gazing at his son with an expression of wonder that never quite faded. By the time James was 6 months old, the ranch had become more prosperous than ever. Lincoln had expanded the herd and was making a name for himself breeding quality cattle. Zara managed the household and the finances, discovering she had a talent for numbers and business that surprised them both. Together, they were building something substantial, a legacy to pass on to their son and whatever other children might come. When James was 2, Zara became pregnant again. This time the pregnancy felt easier, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Lincoln was no less protective, but had learned to trust that she knew her own limits. Their daughter, Grace, was born in the spring, and she was the opposite of her brother, quiet, content, sleeping through the night almost from the beginning. James was fascinated by his little sister, wanting to hold her constantly under careful adult supervision. "We make beautiful babies," Lincoln said one evening, watching James gently pat Grace's head while she nursed. "We do," Zara agreed. "Though I think we might wait a while before having another. 2 is plenty for now." "Agreed," Lincoln said, though his smile suggested he would not mind if their family continued to grow. The years flowed into each other, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their children's lives. James grew into a sturdy boy who followed his father everywhere, eager to learn ranching. Grace was quieter but equally determined, with a gift for gentling animals that amazed everyone. When James was 6 and Grace was 4, Thomas Hartwell remarried. His new wife was a widow from Helena named Catherine, and by all accounts, they were happy together. Lincoln and Zara attended the wedding and Thomas sought them out afterward. "No hard feelings?" Thomas asked, extending his hand to Lincoln. "None," Lincoln said, shaking it firmly. "I hope you will be very happy." "I think I will be," Thomas said. He turned to Zara. "I also wanted to thank you. If you had gone through with our marriage out of obligation, we both would have been miserable. You did the brave thing, and I have found someone who suits me much better. So thank you for having the courage to follow your heart." "I am glad you found happiness," Zara said sincerely. "You deserve it." After that, the awkwardness that had lingered between them finally dissipated. Thomas and Catherine became friends of sorts, joining Lincoln and Zara for occasional dinners and community events. As the years passed, the ranch continued to thrive. Lincoln bought more land, built a new barn, improved the house by adding 2 more bedrooms and a proper dining room. Zara started a small school in Bannack, teaching the children of neighboring ranches 3 days a week, using the education she had received back east to give frontier children opportunities they might not otherwise have. Mrs. Patterson grew older but remained with them, now watching over James and Grace while Zara taught and Lincoln worked the ranch. She was part of the family, and when she became ill one winter, they nursed her as devotedly as they would have a parent. When James was 10 and Grace was 8, Zara became pregnant again, much to everyone's surprise. At 33, she had assumed her childbearing years were behind her. "Apparently not," Lincoln said, grinning as he placed his hand on her still flat belly. "Our family is growing again." This pregnancy was harder than the previous 2, and Zara spent the last months on bed rest under the watchful eyes of Mrs. Patterson and Mrs. Chen. But when her time came, she delivered a healthy baby boy they named Samuel, after Zara's father. Samuel was a happy baby who smiled at everyone and everything, bringing joy wherever he went. James and Grace doted on their little brother, and Lincoln joked that Samuel was going to be spoiled beyond redemption. "That is what little brothers are for," Zara said, watching Grace carefully feed Samuel while James entertained him with funny faces. Life settled into a new rhythm with 3 children. The house was noisier, busier, more chaotic, but also more full of love than Zara had ever imagined possible. When she looked back at the frightened young woman who had stepped off the train in Bannack all those years ago, she barely recognized herself. One evening, when Samuel was about a year old and finally asleep, Zara and Lincoln sat on the porch as they had so many times before. The ranch spread out before them in the twilight, peaceful and prosperous. "You ever regret it?" Lincoln asked suddenly. "Choosing this life, choosing me?" Zara turned to him in surprise. "Never, not for a single moment. Why would you ask that?" Lincoln shrugged, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "You gave up so much. You could have had an easier life with Tom, a quieter life. Instead, you got hard work and sleepless nights and all the challenges of ranch life." "I also got love," Zara said firmly. "I got passion and partnership and a man who sees me as an equal, who values what I bring to our life together. I got 3 beautiful children and a home I helped build. Lincoln, you caught me when I stumbled, and you have been catching me ever since. This life is everything I never knew I wanted." Lincoln pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "I am the one who is lucky. You took a chance on a rough cowboy who did not even know how to properly court a lady." "You are not so rough," Zara teased, "and you courted me perfectly. You were honest and kind, and you let me choose you rather than trying to bind me with obligation." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. After a while, Zara spoke again. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night when we watched the sunset?" "I said a lot of things," Lincoln said. "You said that from the moment you caught me, something in you knew," Zara said. "That you felt like you were exactly where you were supposed to be." "I remember." "I felt it too," Zara said. "I did not understand it then, did not know what to do with it, but I felt it. Like everything in my life had led to that moment, like all the losses and disappointments were just the path to finding you." Lincoln tightened his arm around her. "I love you, Zara Jameson. More with each passing day." "I love you too," Zara said. "Always and forever." The years continued to unfold in their regular pattern. James grew into a young man of 18, taking on more responsibility on the ranch and showing every sign of being a capable successor to his father. Grace, at 16, was beautiful and clever, with suitors already showing interest despite her youth. Samuel, now 8, was still the family's ray of sunshine, bringing laughter wherever he went. Lincoln's hair began to show threads of silver, and lines had appeared around his eyes, but to Zara, he was more handsome than ever. Her own dark hair had a few silver strands too, and her body bore the marks of 3 pregnancies and years of hard work. But Lincoln looked at her with the same intensity he had shown that first day on the train platform. One spring morning, as they prepared to move the cattle to summer pastures, a young couple arrived at the ranch in a wagon. The man helped the woman down, and Zara saw immediately that they were newly arrived, probably hoping for work or directions or assistance of some kind. Lincoln walked over to greet them, and Zara followed, curious. The young woman looked tired and nervous, clutching a worn carpetbag, and something about the scene tickled Zara's memory. "Can we help you folks?" Lincoln asked. "We hope so," the young man said. "We just arrived in Bannack, and we are looking for land to homestead. We heard you might know the area well, might be able to point us in the right direction." As Lincoln gave them information about available parcels and how to file claims, Zara watched the young couple's interaction. The way he steadied her when she swayed with fatigue, the way she looked at him with trust and love, reminded Zara so much of herself and Lincoln all those years ago. After the couple left, armed with directions and advice, Lincoln turned to Zara with a knowing smile. "You are thinking about us, are not you?" "How could I not?" Zara said. "They remind me of how we started, full of hope and determination and love." "We still have all of those things," Lincoln said, "plus a lot more experience and 3 children and more cattle than I ever dreamed I would own." "And gray hair," Zara added, laughing. "Speak for yourself," Lincoln said, pulling her close. "I am as young and spry as ever." "Of course you are," Zara said indulgently, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. That summer, they celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary with a party that drew friends and neighbors from all over the area. Someone suggested they retell the story of how they met, and Lincoln obliged, describing Zara's tumble from the train and his catch, their instant connection despite her being meant for his neighbor. "Best thing that ever happened to me was missing that step," Zara added, to laughter and applause. Thomas Hartwell and his wife Catherine were there, and Thomas raised his glass in a toast. To Zara, who had the courage to follow her heart, and to Lincoln, who was smart enough to catch her when she fell and never let go. Everyone drank to that, and Lincoln pulled Zara into his arms, dancing with her to the fiddle music that followed. As they swayed together under the stars, surrounded by their family and friends, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had arrived in Montana territory as a frightened mail-order bride, expecting a marriage of convenience to a man she had never met. Instead, she had stumbled into the arms of a man who would become her true partner, her greatest love, the father of her children, and the builder of her dreams. "What are you thinking about?" Lincoln murmured in her ear. "How grateful I am that I answered that advertisement," Zara said, "even though it was not your advertisement." "Maybe it was fate," Lincoln said. "Maybe the universe knew you were meant for me all along and just had to arrange things so our paths would cross." "Maybe," Zara agreed. "Or maybe we made our own fate by being brave enough to reach for what we wanted." "Either way, I am keeping you," Lincoln said, pulling her closer. "Good," Zara said, "because I am never letting go." As they danced, their children watching with affection, their friends celebrating around them, and their ranch spreading out in the darkness beyond the lights, Zara knew with absolute certainty that she had found exactly where she belonged. The frightened young woman who had fallen from that train had been caught by more than just a pair of strong arms. She had been caught by destiny, by love, by the promise of a future she had never dared to imagine. And Lincoln, who had reached out on instinct to catch a falling stranger, had found in that moment the woman who would transform his life from solitary survival into a grand adventure, who would fill his house with love and laughter, who would stand beside him through every challenge and every triumph. Years later, when they were old and gray and sitting on that same porch watching their grandchildren play in the yard, they would still tell the story of how they met. The story would become legend in the family. How Grandma Zara was meant to marry the neighbor but stumbled into Grandpa Lincoln's arms instead, and how that stumble had led to a love story that spanned decades. But on this anniversary night, they were still in the middle of their story, still writing new chapters with each passing day. Samuel was chasing fireflies in the grass. Grace was teaching a neighbor's daughter to dance. James was talking with some of the ranch hands about the next day's work, already showing the leadership that would serve him well when he eventually took over the ranch. Lincoln and Zara watched it all, their hands clasped tightly, and knew they had built something that would endure long after they were gone. They had built a family, a legacy, a life of meaning and purpose and deep, abiding love. When the party finally wound down and the guests departed, when the children were finally asleep and the house was quiet, Lincoln and Zara stood on their porch one more time, looking out at the land they had shaped together. 20 years, Lincoln said. It has gone by so fast. And so slowly, Zara added. I feel like I have lived lifetimes with you. Here is to 20 more, Lincoln said, raising an imaginary glass. And 20 after that, Zara added. They went inside together, climbing the stairs to the bedroom they had shared for 2 decades, where they had comforted each other through hard times and celebrated good ones, where they had whispered secrets and dreams, where they had created life and renewed their commitment to each other over and over again. As Zara settled into Lincoln's arms, fitting against him as perfectly as she had from that very first day, she thought about all the moments that had led to this one. The desperation that had driven her to answer a mail-order bride advertisement. The twist of fate that had made her stumble on the train platform. The stranger who had caught her and seen something in her that she had not even seen in herself. She thought about the courage it had taken to walk away from Thomas Hartwell, to risk everything for a love she had known for less than 48 hours. She thought about the early days of her marriage, learning to be a rancher's wife, learning to love and be loved without restraint. She thought about her children, each one a miracle, each one proof that the choice she had made had been the right one. She thought about the life she and Lincoln had built together, brick by brick, day by day, season by season. And she knew, with a certainty that went bone deep, that she would make the same choice again. If she could go back to that moment on the train platform, knowing everything that would follow, she would still choose to fall. She would still choose Lincoln. She would still choose this wild, wonderful, challenging, rewarding life. Because in the end, love was not about safety or convenience or careful planning. Love was about taking a leap of faith, about trusting someone enough to catch you, about building something together that was stronger than anything you could build alone. Lincoln caught her when she stumbled, and true to his word, he never let go. And Zara, who had been so afraid of falling, learned that sometimes the best things in life came when you stopped trying to stand on your own and allowed yourself to be caught, held, cherished, and loved. Their story, like all great love stories, was not without its challenges. But through everything, the harsh winters and brutal summers, the financial struggles and the times of plenty, the joys and sorrows that come with any long life, they faced it together. and that made all the difference. As sleep finally claimed them, wrapped in each other's arms as they had been for 20 years and would be for many more to come, their last thoughts were the same: gratitude for the stumble that had brought them together, and wonder that something so simple could have changed everything so completely. In the morning, they would wake and begin another day of their life together. Lincoln would rise early and head out to check the cattle. Zara would make breakfast and plan her lessons for the week. The children would go about their routines. Life would continue in its ordinary way. But underlying all of it, sustaining all of it, would be the love they shared. A love that had begun with a fall and a catch, that had grown through commitment and trust, that had been tested by time and hardship and had emerged stronger for it. This was their happily ever after, not a fairy tale ending but a real life, built day by day, choice by choice, moment by moment. It was messy and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. It was everything they had ever wanted and more than they had ever dreamed possible. And it had all begun because a mail-order bride was meant for one man but stumbled into the arms of another, and the cowboy who caught her chose to never let go.